What up, everybody? The very first scene of Fight Night, the $1 Million Heist, shows Frank Moulton, the godfather of the Black Mafia, with his pistol pointed at the Chicken Man, Gordon Williams, telling him to testify before pulling the trigger. Then the story went back 2 weeks before that, the night of the big Muhammad Ali fight, when Chicken Man was responsible for throwing a party that would host some of the biggest gangsters in America. But this party got robbed, setting the stage for the course of events that took place over that 2 weeks that led to Chicken Man in that office staring at Frank Moulton's pistol, asking him if he believes in God, and with Frank Moulton telling Chicken Man to testify. And over the course of those 2 weeks, every person associated with that robbery got taken off the board one by one, as Frank and the Atlanta PD was on the hunt trying to find out who was behind the robbery. And it was revealed that one of Frank's closest associates out of New Jersey, Cadillac Richie, planned the whole thing with the intent of using it to overthrow Frank as the new leader of the firm. Cadillac also held Frank responsible for his father's death. Cadillac also had his mother in his ear, who was always planting seeds in his head against Frank. But Cadillac's plan went left when Chicken Man, who was the primary suspect of the heist, who was trying to redeem his name, alongside recently suspended cop J.D. Hudson, followed the remaining crew from the robbery to Jekyll Island to meet up with Cadillac's right-hand man, Emerson Dorsey, who told them he had someone who was supposed to be bringing the pay for what they stole at the robbery. But the intent was to wipe out the whole crew one by one so there'd be no loose ends. But this entire plan went left, and the last man standing was Willie Black, who was also captured by J.D. Hudson and the Chicken Man. And they planned on using Willie Black in making their next move to take down Cadillac. While Cadillac was sitting down for breakfast with Frank, working on his plan to eliminate Frank, he received an unexpected phone call from who he thought was Emerson, going to tell him that everything was taken care of. But it was Chicken Man, telling him that his right-hand man Emerson was dead, and his entire plan to set up the robbery would be exposed to Frank if he didn't meet up with him at a diner called Pinky's Pies on 14. But Pinky's Pies was an entire front the Chicken Man and JD set up to bust Cadillac at and catch him making a confession. Chicken Man used people he knew from all over Atlanta to make this happen, and JD used a few young cops that he could trust to make the arrests. Because like Chicken Man said, he collects people like he collects numbers. But just when they thought they had everything solved, Frank's soldier Lamar came through with a hit squad and put a bullet in Willie Black's head and broke Cadillac free and put Chicken Man in the trunk. Then they took Chicken Man to a property that Frank purchased. This forced JD to show up at Frank's penthouse with his gun drawn on Frank, forcing Frank to take him to Chicken Man. JD also gave Frank incentive that he would expose to him who was behind the whole robbery if he did that. Vivian, Chicken Man's former mistress just a couple weeks ago, who was now working for Frank after she earned his trust by killing Missouri Slim. Missouri Slim was also fed up with Frank, similar to Cadillac, but the difference between them is Cadillac was calculated, while Missouri Slim simply used brute force, openly aggressive and not hiding his hand, while Cadillac was always working behind the scenes the entire time. When Frank and JD got to the scene, as soon as JD told Frank that he was going to expose the man who was behind the whole thing, Cadillac lost his cool and started pinning the whole thing on his lieutenant, Emerson Dorsey. Frank then told JD to give him his gun by telling Lamar to empty his clip into Chicken Man's head if JD didn't give him his gun by the count of 3. At this point, JD told Frank, for God's sake, for once in your life, keep your word. And Frank said that the jury was still out on that, letting us know that the two had come up with a plan, but Frank had audibled. Then he took Chicken Man to the office, going back to the scene that started the whole show. But I don't think Frank had any real intention on killing Chicken Man, but he needed to buy time in the office like he was questioning him before making it look like he bought Cadillac's story and killed Chicken Man. So Frank shot a hole in the wall to make it sound like he took the kill shot. And during this scene, Frank revealed how when Chicken Man first revealed to him his vision for Atlanta, it messed with Frank's mind because they shared the same vision for the city. Frank was a Georgia native who moved north when he was younger and became the man he was. And he was trying to move back to Georgia and invest into the city of Atlanta. But none of the other leaders of the council shared the same vision, and he knew that Cadillac was using that to his advantage, because Frank knew Cadillac planned the robbery, and he met up with the firm earlier that day with the plan on making his final move. But Frank said he couldn't just kill Cadillac because it would start a war. But he was relying on Chicken Man and JD to do things right and put Cadillac away for a long time, letting us know that him and JD came up with a plan on the way there. When they were first on the way to the location and were arguing, Vivian slammed on the brakes and let them know that they were going to have to put their differences aside, because the only way this was going to work and the only way the city was going to work is if they worked out their bull. And they did just that, because later, after the whole thing went down, it was revealed that they did work together to make sure that everybody survived. Frank told JD that he's going to get them all killed, but JD said, "Just get me there and nobody will have to die." Then, after putting the bullet in the wall, after Chicken Man testified and Frank told him he was forgiven, he told Chicken Man that he don't play numbers, that he plays chess, and that he's the king, Lack is the rook, and Chicken was the pawn. And he needed Chicken Man to play dead so Lack would make his move. When he stepped out and the rest of the firm was already there, Frank acted like he was surprised to see them. And Cadillac asked Frank if it was done, asking him if he had killed Chicken Man. Then when Cadillac thought he had won and finally played his hand, JD revealed the picture of Emerson and Mac to the rest of the firm. And Cadillac said that Frank was responsible for the death of Slim and his father. And going full circle, Frank let Cadillac know that he had nothing to do with his father's death, and the only problem his father ever had was Cadillac's mother. But he was smart enough not to let her get him killed. Going back to Cadillac's mother being the main one planting the seed against Frank. So she had been doing that all the way back since his father's days, and Frank also knew about it. Then when Cadillac was just about to shoot Frank, the cops made their move and moved in and arrested Cadillac. But by revealing that Cadillac was a snake first, Frank won back over the support of the firm. Then Frank showed Cadillac that the Chicken Man was still alive, because Cadillac thought that Frank killed the Chicken Man, and if both Willie Black and the Chicken Man were both dead, they wouldn't have had nobody to corroborate the recording in court. After all this went down, Chicken Man went to talk to Vivian one last time, who was going to be working for Frank moving forward. And he asked Vivian if she thought his wife Faye would take him back. And she said there's only one way to find out. So Chicken Man went to find his wife to try to restore their relationship. And after he apologized and admitted that he had been wrong, and he thought she wasn't going to forgive him, she invited him inside for some food. And Chicken Man went back to being Gordon and became an ordained minister, going full circle to Frank having his pistol pointed at Gordon and telling him to testify. This was the ultimate wake-up call for Gordon, that he needed to get his life right. So Gordon went from collecting people like he collects numbers to ultimately collecting people for the Lord. And Gordon served as a minister until he died in 2014. As for JD, this bust helped him get his job back, as well as a promotion to leader of internal affairs. And Frank planted his flag in Atlanta, with his first business being Bankhead Unlimited. And both Frank and Gordon's vision for Atlanta ultimately came to pass. And there you have it. Leave your thoughts, theories, and predictions in the comments.